The farmer entered the capital's grand market just as the morning bells finished ringing. Sunlight spilled over marble columns and colorful awnings, glinting off brass scales and glass jars filled with spices from distant lands. The air buzzed with bargaining voices and the confidence of men who believed money had taught them everything worth knowing. Against all that shine, the farmer looked painfully ordinary. His tunic was faded from years of washing in river water, stitched carefully where it had torn. Dust clung to the hem of his trousers, and his hands, large, rough, and scarred, rested calmly at his sides. He paused for a moment, not out of awe, but habit, scanning the market the way one scans a field before planting. A silk-robed merchant noticed him first and nudged his companion. "Look at this one," he snorted. "Did the countryside finally learn where the city is?" Laughter rippled nearby. Another man added, "Careful, old farmer, you might trip over a coin." "They're expensive." The farmer didn't flinch. He walked on, stopping at a grain stall. He scooped a handful of wheat, rubbing it between his fingers, checking its dryness, its strength. His eyes narrowed slightly, not with doubt, but calculation. "Good yield this year," he said softly. The merchant blinked, surprised by the confidence in his voice, then scoffed. "You wouldn't know good grain if it bit you. Go back to your mud hut." Around them, shoppers slowed, sensing entertainment. A woman whispered, "Why is he even here?" Another laughed. "Maybe he thinks money grows like potatoes." The farmer smiled faintly, not insulted, just amused. He had heard worse from storms, from droughts, from land that refused to cooperate. Words had never scared him. He moved from stall to stall, asking prices, listening more than speaking, memorizing figures the way other men memorized faces. Each step he took drew more mocking glances. To them, wealth had a uniform, and he wasn't wearing it. Yet as the laughter followed him, something else followed too, silence from those who noticed his calm. While others boasted and argued, he observed. While others chased profit loudly, he measured it quietly. No one in the market realized it yet, but the poorest-looking man there already owned more land than all of them combined. By midday, the market had grown louder and more crowded. The sun sat high above the capital, and the merchants' confidence swelled with the heat. Coins clinked. Deals were shouted across stalls, and success was measured by how many people stopped to stare. The farmer stopped at the largest grain merchant's stand, where neatly stacked sacks formed a wall of abundance. The merchant stood proudly behind them, dressed in embroidered robes, his fingers heavy with rings. He looked the farmer up and down and smirked before a word was even spoken. "I want to purchase your entire seasonal harvest," the farmer said calmly. His voice was even, neither timid nor boastful. "Delivered over the next 6 months." The merchant froze for a heartbeat, then burst into laughter. "My entire harvest," he repeated loudly, making sure others heard. "You can't afford a single sack, let alone all of it." Nearby traders turned to watch. One leaned in and whispered, "This is going to be good." The farmer reached into his worn cloth bag and carefully removed a folded document. The paper was thick, official, and marked with a deep red seal, simple, but unmistakably formal. He laid it flat on the counter. "These are the terms," he said. "Fair price. Guaranteed transport. Immediate advance." The merchant barely glanced at it. He waved his hand dismissively. "I don't do business with men who dress like hired help." He laughed again, louder this time. "Come back when you can afford shoes without holes." The farmer didn't argue. He didn't raise his voice or defend himself. He simply picked up the contract, rolled it back into his bag, and nodded once. "Very well," he said. As he turned to leave, someone called out, "Hey farmer. If you're buying dreams, I've got plenty for cheap." More laughter followed him down the aisle. But the farmer's expression didn't change. Each insult was just another note added to a ledger he had been keeping since sunrise. He paused briefly at the edge of the market and looked back, not in anger, but in quiet assessment. Deals were being made, but wisdom was in short supply. And by refusing him, the merchants had just rejected the most valuable agreement of their lives. Without even knowing it, the market's noise shattered in an instant. Steel hooves struck stone as a line of black carriages rolled through the main gate, each bearing the royal crest etched in gold. Conversations died mid-sentence. Merchants who moments earlier had been shouting prices now fell silent, clutching their ledgers as uniformed guards stepped down and formed a line. "What's going on?" someone whispered. At the front of the procession stood a man in a dark coat, his posture rigid, his expression unreadable. He carried a leather case pressed close to his chest. When he spoke, his voice carried effortlessly across the market. "By order of the crown," he announced, "all grain contracts signed or refused this morning are now under royal review." Panic rippled through the crowd. Merchants exchanged nervous glances. The largest grain trader, the same one who had laughed the loudest, felt sweat bead at his temples. The official opened the leather case and removed a familiar document. The red seal caught the sunlight. A murmur passed through the onlookers. "This contract," the official continued, "was issued by the kingdom's primary agricultural authority." He paused, letting the weight of his words settle. "It bears the personal seal of Lord Karim of the Northern Plains." The name hit the market like thunder. Some gasped, others went pale. Every serious trader in the country knew that name. Lord Karim owned more farmland than entire provinces combined. His grain fed armies, stabilized prices, and rescued the kingdom during famine years. The crowd parted as the farmer stepped forward. The official immediately bowed, pressing a fist to his chest. "My lord," he said respectfully, "we have completed the review." The farmer inclined his head slightly, as if this were an everyday inconvenience. His simple clothes looked suddenly different, not poor, but practical. Not small, but unbothered. The merchant who had mocked him stumbled forward. My lord," he stammered, voice cracking, "I didn't realize." "You realized enough," the farmer said gently. There was no anger in his tone, only truth. "You chose not to listen." The official raised his voice again. "Merchants who refused Lord Karim's offer will now sell their harvest at the state-controlled rate. Merchants who treated him fairly will receive priority contracts and guaranteed protection." A sharp line formed between regret and relief. The laughter from the morning returned, but this time, only as a memory that burned deeper than shame. The market no longer felt grand. Where pride had once stood tall, silence now settled heavily. Merchants who had laughed in the morning avoided eye contact, suddenly fascinated by their own shoes and ledgers. Guards stepped aside as the farmer, Lord Karim, walked calmly through the aisle he had crossed earlier under mockery. He stopped before the first stall that had treated him with quiet respect. The merchant bowed deeply, hands trembling. "My lord," he said, "I spoke honestly with you this morning." "I hope you did," Karim replied. "And honesty deserves reward." He nodded to the royal accountant, who marked the man's name. "Priority deliveries. Full payment. No delays." Relief washed over the merchant's face. At the next stall, a younger trader stepped forward, eyes filled with fear. "I laughed," he admitted. "But I was wrong." Karim studied him for a moment. "Laughter can come from ignorance," he said. "What matters is what follows." He adjusted the terms. "Fair, but firm. A lesson, not a punishment." Then he reached the grand stall, the one that had mocked him cruelly. The proud merchant now stood pale and sweating. "Please," he whispered, "I beg you." Karim raised a hand. "I will not ruin you," he said. "The market needs food, not revenge." He turned to the official. "State pricing only. No special favors." It was mercy, but costly mercy. As the crowd watched, Karim gathered his cloth bag and prepared to leave. Nothing about him had changed. No new robes, no gold rings, only the truth had been revealed. At the market gate, someone finally asked, "My lord, why dress like this?" Karim paused. "Because the soil never cared who I was," he said. "It only cared how I worked." He stepped into the sunlight and disappeared into the city streets, dressed as simply as before. But everyone who remained behind understood one thing clearly. True wealth whispers, and wisdom never judges a man by his clothes.